And then that orange flashing light up there, if you get the ball stuck in that, it will actually kick another ball in as if it's another wrestler. Oh, I lost it. Oh, both. Everybody out of the pool. Oh yeah, so Osric, hey, how's it going? I remember seeing you in the other pinball threads. So of course, The Rock and Stone Cold, they had they were pretty much the greatest feud of the Attitude Era. So they wrestled each other at WrestleMania 3 times. So the first was at WrestleMania 15 in 1999, which was incredible, and probably the best match of the show and the most memorable for sure. And then they wrestled each other again at WrestleMania 17 in Houston, Texas, and that was 2001. And that was right before WWF bought WCW. And the promotion building up to that pay-per-view, to that WrestleMania, was the greatest ever. That's one of my favorite WrestleManias of all time. And then, of course, Steve Austin won both of those. So the first time he won in WrestleMania 15, The Rock was a bad guy. At WrestleMania 17, The Rock was still sort of a bad guy, but it was mostly about their personal feud with each other and just for, you know, who's the better wrestler. And then Steve Austin joined with Mr. McMahon, which was like he had been feuding with Mr. McMahon for 3 years, and he finally turned and became a bad guy, which was, Steve Austin has said himself, even recently on his podcast, that that's probably one of his biggest regrets, was becoming a bad guy at that show, because the audience didn't necessarily want him to be a bad guy. But he did, and that was a great match. It was a really, really good match. And then 2003, which actually on my stream earlier this week, we watched WrestleMania 19 from Seattle. That was Steve Austin's final match against The Rock in his final match of his career, and it was another really good match. And finally, The Rock got his win. So Austin had beat him 2 times in a row, and then the 3rd time, The Rock got the win. Which is the way wrestlers, when they go out, when it's their last match, they usually want to go out putting somebody else over. And it worked out perfectly, and it was a really, really good match. But yeah, they have had feuds ongoing for their entire career. And there's a good chance Austin has one more match left in him, even though it's now been 13 years since his last match. It's very possible he could have one more match, and it would be amazing if it was against The Rock. Because The Rock still wrestles on a pretty regular basis. Like usually at least once a year he comes back for a special event. Anything notable about this Royal Rumble? So Soletta is asking about this particular pin. So I've actually done a lot of upgrades to this. I replaced all the lights with LEDs, but I used the frosted warm white LEDs, so they look more like the incandescent. But I've replaced the flippers with gold flippers, all new rubber. I fixed everything. There were so many problems. It was so dirty. There was wiring problems, so I've pretty much done a complete overhaul. I have a brand new ramp. So this is a brand new ramp for the outer edge here that goes up to that point. My ramp doesn't have any cracks in it, but it's very worn down from the ball, so it's a little bit foggy. But I have a brand new ramp, and I have the ball cover, which I had done in blue acrylic that'll go over the upper side of it here. And then I'm also working on getting an LCD that's going to run off of a Raspberry Pi computer that's going to actually have a little video screen up in that corner in the upper left, and it was going to play this match over and over on loop. So I'll have like an hour, it's over an hour for this match, just looping on the playfield itself, which would be incredible. I also have the upper playfield up here. This game had a prototype that was made, and I found one of the prototype upper playfields. So this actually is that section, but the prototype is very different because the game itself has this groove that goes all the way around, and the ball never goes that direction of the arrow. So let's see if I can show it here. There we go. So the ball actually normally comes from the ramp up here, and it drains down to the right, and then you have your mini flippers to work the drop targets here, and then this kick out, and then there's a diverter that kicks the ball up. But the ball never goes this direction. So when they had to recreate this game because so many wrestlers left the company, that they recreated all of the artwork, and the game went from being a standard size to a wide body. And so at that time they changed this. I just saw a follow up there. I'll have to check it on my chat when it comes up. Thanks for the follow. But they actually changed it. So this one is pretty cool. It's never been used, brand new old stock. But the ball never travels in that direction. So I guess I could install it, but there's no reason to. Mine is in pretty good condition. They also changed, like this arrow is increased jackpot, whereas in here, I can't even read it, it's kind of worn. But it's actually for your loop. So you actually can loop around to collect belts. I've also added the lights for the speaker panels. So my speaker panels have the glowing LEDs, and they're kind of inset now, which looks really cool. There's also LEDs underneath the game that are attached to the game itself. So when you're playing, like flashers will go off and it will be red, green, or blue based on whatever other flashes are happening. And then at the very top, there's a custom, and I showed it just a little bit ago, but if you look here on the top of the machine, there's a custom laser cut WWF Heavyweight Championship belt that's a replica of the original that came with the game. So I've put a lot of love and care into this thing to get it back up and running the best way I can. C&K says, yeah, for a villain, Piper was a likable guy. Him and Mean Gene interviews are the best. Yeah, Piper was great. I mean, even when he was a bad guy, you hated him because he was bad, but you loved him because he was so good at it. And Mean Gene, greatest interviewer of all time. Look at that. There's the Undertaker. Undertaker was like my guy, and he still is. The moment I saw him, it was actually just a little over a year before this is when he debuted. And I was a huge fan of horror movies and wrestling. And so when he came out, it was like, that was my guy. And the fact that he still wrestles to this day and has a huge match, which probably will be his last match in 2 weeks, or his last WrestleMania match. I'm flying to Texas to make sure I'm there in person for it, because it's very likely to be the last one. Oh, you meant the wrestling event, actually. Well, I just gave you the rundown of the machine. Of course, this is Royal Rumble 1992, which is what this pinball machine is based on. And this is the greatest Royal Rumble match of all time. Mainly because you have all these great wrestlers, but Ric Flair works his way from the beginning all the way to the end of the show. And you got great commentary, you got all the most famous classic wrestlers from this era. It's just the best, and it's non-stop action for over an hour. So cool. Yes, thank you for the follow, Soletta. Really appreciate it. Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff going on here. I also want to get a color DMD for my my back glass there for the animation. They haven't programmed it yet, but I'm working with another guy. We're trying to get them to allow us to assist in the programming of colorizing that DMD, which I think would be fantastic for this game especially. There's so much color with all these wrestlers. I mean, you can even see from here how colorful just everything is. I mean, that was when wrestling was great. When it was so much fun. Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it. I'm glad everybody's enjoying this, because I always thought, like, well, if I make a Twitch channel that's too much about wrestling, nobody's going to watch. But I'm glad that people are kind of experiencing it and you know, at least, no, not hating it. And in many cases, everybody that's been, you know, watching has kind of enjoyed it. So I'm glad I can share my love of wrestling and pinball and arcade machines with everybody. Yeah, this... If you ever watched wrestling at this time, this was about the time that they had been feuding. The Macho Man and Jake Roberts had been feuding, and the Macho Man got married, storyline-wise, he got married to Miss Elizabeth at the summer before this, so about 6 months prior to this, and The Undertaker and Jake Roberts ruined their wedding, and Jake had actually tortured the Macho Man with a live cobra, so he tied him up in the ropes. And then he took a live cobra, and the cobra bit the Macho Man on the arm and gnawed on him for quite a while. And then, of course, Elizabeth came out just crying and trying to save him, and Jake was just so evil. And so, of course, when they got married, Jake Roberts had to ruin the wedding reception, and they opened up their gift, and out jumps this amazing, huge cobra. And then The Undertaker shows up out of nowhere with the urn and just cracks him over the back of the head. Incredible stuff. I mean, this era of wrestling was just the best. So much good stuff going on. So many fun storylines that actually made sense and made you like really care about the good guys, you know, and the bad guys. And it's not quite like that anymore. Yeah, listen to that. You can hear The Undertaker breathing. At this time, he was still very much like a zombie. So he was based on like the old West Undertaker. Like his costume and everything, but he really was like an undead zombie. And he derived his energy from the urn that Paul Bearer would carry out to the ring. So these guys used to like knock him out and beat him up, and he'd be laying knocked out cold, and then Paul Bearer would bring the urn over and raise it up. And as soon as he raised it up, the Undertaker would just sit up straight on the mat. And of course, all of his opponents would just be terrified of him. Come on, stay in. So I'm in the Royal Rumble multi-ball mode right now in the game. I'm doing terrible at it. I got to hit the lit jackpot, but I lost my ball. So down the out lane. So sometimes if you lose your multi-ball, it gives you like 10 seconds to get back in the ring to restart the mode. So here's the Berserker. He's a guy that they sent against the Undertaker. And one of the memorable scenes with him, he used to carry like a big shield like a Viking and a big sword. And there was one time where he fought the Undertaker, and the Undertaker was laying on the ground, and he took his sword and just ran and jabbed down at him, and the Undertaker, of course, sat up, and the sword went right through the canvas into the ring. Like, it was a legitimate sword that he left stuck in the ring. It's like, man, the timing of that had to be just incredible for the Undertaker to safely get out of the way, because that was a legit sword coming down at him. Oh yeah, CNK, you do have the translate for the WrestleMania, that's right. Yeah, that'd be awesome. That's one thing about the new Stern games, is they don't have animated back glasses anymore. It's just LED lights that light it up, or those fluorescent bulbs. So I've seen, like, CoinTaker has made these kits where you can put like a mounted wall back there with LEDs that are now programmed in, either on a little chip or they're tied into the game, that can actually flash and animate the back glass. So I'm kind of tempted to do that with WrestleMania, because it would be nice to have like each of the individual wrestlers have their like faces light up or flash or do something. But it is a mirrored back glass too, which is cool, but it's only reflecting the dark room, so sometimes it's hard to tell that it's actually mirrored. But yeah, that would be pretty awesome to make a custom frame for it and put some LEDs behind it. Man, that sucked. Oh yeah, ball save. Wow, twice in a row. That's probably the worst ball I've ever had on this game. Virgil. So he was the $1 Million Man's bodyguard, and this is around the time that he decided he didn't want to be a bodyguard anymore. And bodyguard is kind of a nice way of saying that he was the $1 Million Man's houseboy, indentured servant. So they ended up feuding over whether he should be paid more for the work that he provides and stuff like that. So they ended up having a match for the $1 Million Man's gold and diamond title belt. But Virgil never really was a successful wrestler on his own. The best success he ever had was when he joined the NWO years and years later in WCW as NWO Vincent. And they called him Vince instead of Virgil as a play off of Vince McMahon. But even to this day, he still does local shows, independent shows, and he goes by the NWO Vincent name. And of course, there's pictures that are internet memes that show him sitting at a convention for autographs, and he's sitting at a table that says Wrestling Superstar Virgil, and there's nobody at his table. Which is kind of sad, but it's also probably pretty realistic. I met him down in Anaheim, California at the Wizard World Convention in 2010, and he pretty much hangs out with Ted DiBiase, because people will go and pay money to meet Ted DiBiase, and then, you know, I just wanted to get the picture with Ted DiBiase, and he says, "So do you want Virgil in the picture too?" And I said, "Sure, why not?" Because he was standing there, so why not put him in there? And he goes, "Mike, come over here." And then he looks at me and he goes, "That's going to be an extra $10. Like, alright, whatever. Virgil's there, might as well have him stand there. And so all he had to do was stand there, cross his arm, just like he used to in the old days. He would just stand there and wave a few $100 bills while Ted DiBiase did all the work. So that was pretty cool. And the greatest thing was I asked Ted DiBiase if he would put me in the $1 Million Dream, and he did. And I said, "Just be very careful. Don't actually put me to sleep and drop me on the floor." And he's like, "Oh, don't worry about that." So he wrapped it around, and I was wearing my Ghostbusters uniform, so I got this great picture of Ted DiBiase choking me out while I'm wearing my Ghostbusters uniform. Man, that was so fun. And actually, I'm working on a replica of the $1 Million belt. And so next time I get an opportunity to meet him, I definitely want to have that done, where I was going to replace the replicas that they sell. It's like a real metal, you know, gold-plated metal, but they have like those plastic crystals in there. So I actually bought these Swarovski crystals that I'm going to individually replace, and there's literally like 1,000 of them in this belt. So I haven't been motivated to actually get in there and do it. But I want to replace all the crystals with these nice, amazing crystals, so it looks more like the authentic, true diamond belt, and then get a picture with him and the title. Oh, I shouldn't have flipped on that one. That center post would have saved it that time. Your Stern Trek backglass flashes, but Metallica doesn't. Yeah, when they went to Spike, the Spike board itself is about that big, and it has LEDs on it. So all the light that comes out is from like 6 LEDs on the motherboard itself. So there's no way to control it other than the brightness. You can tone the brightness down based on like 0 to 100%, which is kind of nice, but it just glows. So it doesn't have any kind of animated flashing or anything. Yeah, if you look me up on Facebook, I think if you go to facebook.com/TK, so TK8992, I can actually post it in here. Let me do that. Let's see if it'll work. So the TK8992, that's actually my 501st Legion ID as a Stormtrooper and Darth Vader. So I think that's what it's set up for Facebook. But if you go on there, send me a friend request, and I've got pictures. I don't think, you don't even have to be a friend request to see my photos. I think everything's public on there. But there's a ton of pictures from, like the different, last year I went to WrestleCon at WrestleMania, and I met Bret Hart and Ric Flair, and there's so many amazing guys. And then it was like a year ago yesterday when I got to meet Mick Foley. So there's a picture of him, and he actually made a custom socko for me where he drew the little face and signed it and had the little sock puppet. It was pretty awesome. But we went to his stand-up comedy show, which was brilliant, and that was actually in Portland. And then when I went down to Santa Clara for WrestleMania last year, we went and saw his show down there, and he did a completely different, like, 2-hour show. It was amazing that he has that much content that's already prepped and ready and timed out. It was awesome. Yeah, the replica of the World Heavyweight Championship belt. I have the Undisputed title, which is the only one that I actually paid like they have like the deluxe version with leather and everything, and I bought that like 10 years ago now when The Undertaker was the first. That belt was, he was like the first one to wear that belt, and that was around like 2003 when Brock Lesnar and Undertaker and Hulk Hogan, and they were all feuding over that title, and Triple H. So that I have that one, and then I've got the WCW United States title, which is the first replica I bought, and I think I got that in like '99. That was before WWF was even doing replica belts. And it just uses that fake leather, so it's like that hard plastic leather. I don't like it so much. Good looking belt though. But the one that I want the most, of course, is the Winged Eagle belt, like the one on top of the pinball machine here. And so I'm always keeping an eye out for that one, but it's really hard to find because legally they can't use the WWF block letters anymore. So if you find an authentic one with the block letters the way it is, it costs a lot more. But you can also buy from the original belt makers. So if you want to spend over $1,000 up to almost $2,000, you can have a real belt replica created from some of these private belt makers. And I've been tempted, but it's like, man, that's the cost of a pinball machine. So I don't know if I want to spend that much on a belt that's basically just going to be framed and hang on a wall. But that's the belt. If I could only own one belt, it would be that one. Which, that's the belt that they're fighting for in this match that eventually Ric Flair wins. Yeah, there's Hulk Hogan in there. Man, this was shortly after The Undertaker had beat Hulk Hogan, so they still had a feud going on. But The Undertaker defeated Hulk Hogan for the title just a few months prior to this, and then Hulk Hogan beat him like a week later, or a few days later, at Tuesday in Texas, which was kind of a test to see if anybody would buy a pay-per-view on a Tuesday night. And I don't remember how successful it was, but man, there was some good stuff at that show. And that was actually the show that I mentioned earlier with Jake Roberts and Macho Man. That was the show right after he had the Cobra after it bit Randy Savage's arm. That was kind of their blow-off match. And that was such a good match. Such good psychology and storytelling. Oh, damn it. Skinner. That's cool. Oh, really? Lethal Frag is in the Twitch Hall of Fame. That's amazing. He deserves it, too. The guy has established such an incredible channel. And, man, I couldn't believe it. On Monday night, I started a stream about the same time as tonight. Not even expecting anybody to watch. Just wanted to play a little bit. And then Prixie came in and she said, so how long are you going to stream? And I said, well, I'll be up for a little while. And then all of a sudden, hundreds of people just flooded in. So we had like 400 people watching WrestleMania. And so I put on WrestleMania 10, and then we watched WrestleMania 19, and I streamed for 7 hours. So that won't happen tonight. But I went for 7 hours, and I hung it up at like 6 a.m., and I still had over 100 people watching. It was amazing. I was so happy and very, very honored that they would send all their viewers over to me. Yeah, the Smoking Skull belt, that's a really cool-looking belt, and they are pretty rare now. They're out there, but people don't want to give them up. So if you want them, you're going to pay more than they're probably worth. But a lot of those belts, for whatever reason, still go for like anywhere from $300 to $500 for even the lower quality ones. And the deluxe models, or the ones that have actually had, you know, re-leathering services, those are going to go even closer to $1,000 for a good one. Especially if it has the old WWF scratch logo on it. So if it's the authentic replica from that era, you're going to pay a little bit more. Come on. There we go. Got two up in the ring. Lost one of them. There it is. Jackpot in the center. Put up the left ramp for the jackpot. Oh, lost it. Oh, there's Sergeant Slaughter. And this was actually just before, this is when Slaughter was still a good guy. He was still a G.I. Joe. He hadn't yet turned and joined Saddam Hussein and the Iraqis. So when the Gulf War kicked off, they decided that Sergeant Slaughter would be the perfect man to be a turncoat, to turn his back on America and join the Iraqis. So he and the Iron Sheik, and as Colonel Mustafa and then General Adnan, they had this, you know, Saddam Hussein impersonator, and he became like one of the most hated heels at the time, which led up to Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior teaming up to take on, or actually that was at the year prior, SummerSlam. No, that was actually, was that 92? Well, I can't remember. That was called the Match Made in Hell, and I can't remember if that was 91 or 92. It wasn't 92. That was in Wembley Stadium. That must have been 91. So this was after he had finally relinquished that Gulf War attitude. But yeah, Sergeant Slaughter, actually, when he gets eliminated from this Royal Rumble, it's one of the coolest eliminations. We already saw the Boss Man, and that's the best elimination, I think, of all time. But Sergeant Slaughter has this great way that he gets thrown over the top. So they whip him into the corner, and he hits the turnbuckle, but then he bounces up and over and hits the post on the outside and falls to the ground. Oh, I hit the Tag Team Millions captive ball. Come on. Oh, saved by the center post. There he is. Sid Vicious. And of course, Sid started out in WWF as Sid Justice and was a good guy. And then he turned his back on Hulk Hogan based on him in the Royal Rumble. Oh man, I just lost it. So actually, I think it was this Royal Rumble. He was still Sid Justice, and he and Hulk Hogan have a little out here at the end that sets up for WrestleMania. Because it was supposed to be Ric Flair versus Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania, which is also why they made the pinball machine with both of them on the sides before they had to change all the artwork. But then they changed it for whatever reason. They decided that Ric Flair, for some reason, wasn't going to be the top draw. And so they actually had Ric Flair fight the Macho Man, which was a great match. But then they had Sid take over the spot against Hulk Hogan. Still a good show, but it could have been so much better because Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan never really had that big main event one-on-one fight that everybody wanted to see. Because Ric Flair was like the #1 guy of WCW, and then Hulk Hogan was the #1 WWF guy. And when they finally brought them together, for whatever reason, they didn't put them up against each other. It was in the plans, but something changed, and it just didn't happen. So Berryman's asking, am I shaking the machine, or is the machine shaking? There's actually a Rumble motor in the game. So when you hit the Royal Rumble mode, it vibrates the whole game. So I bump it a little bit for nudging on the edge, but the vibration motor simulates an actual Rumble. So when you get into the multi-ball mode or you hit any of these pop bumpers, the whole game vibrates. And I have one installed in my WrestleMania next to me, but it's way more powerful, and it actually shakes like I have those little pop vinyl guys up there, and they come falling off all the time, and it's almost too powerful. So I don't know. I got to figure out a way to take the power level down a little bit. Yeah, Sergeant Slaughter G.I. Joe action figure. Yeah, those are pretty rare now, too, if you can find them, especially if they're still in their unopened case. But I have a friend that has a loose one that he refuses to sell me. But yeah, there's Warlord. So that's the guy I mentioned earlier that eventually teamed with the Barbarian. And he normally has like this great silver shoulder pads and half mask on his face. Pretty cool. His most memorable feud, I think, is with the British Bulldog, because they both use the full Nelson. So the full Nelson, you come up behind under the arms and put your hands behind their head, and you just crunch, and their arms get pulled back and their head goes down. And it's a very effective move, especially if you're a guy with muscles like that. So both of them did the same move, so they had this feud over who had the most powerful full Nelson. And I remember getting really into that. I think that was maybe around SummerSlam '93. Almost went in. Yeah, so you can hear the video mode right now. The game is vibrating every time I hit Yoko with the chair. Alright, so now I want to... Oh, it went to the outlane. Here we go, 3-ball pandemonium. Oh, couldn't even save that one. I think that was, oh, this is ball 3. Yeah, listen to the audience, man. Flair and Hogan, people wanted to see it, so I don't know why, I don't know what changed that made him not go with that, but... There we go. Royal Rumble multi-ball. So there's the countdown, so I got 20 seconds up on the clock. So as long as I can keep at least 2 balls going, then the countdown will send another ball in, just like in the Royal Rumble when a new guy comes out. It'll launch an extra ball in as long as you can maintain 20 seconds of active gameplay. So right now I'm trying to keep the ball up in that upper ring and keep the one down below going while I'm trying to hit that flashing jackpot light. Oh, dang it, missed it. So there's the 3rd ball just ejected right as it went down the outlane, but that gave me an extra ball. So I gotta hit back up through the right lane for the jackpot. Ideally up in the ring. There we go. Oh, I went out. Darn it. Ooh. Lucky save. You know what's funny here? So I'm on ball 3, and I guess I haven't even started any modes yet on this game. I've been hitting multi-ball, but I haven't started any modes. So you got to go through the modes to get to the Royal Rumble 6-ball multi-ball main event, which I really want to do before the stream ends. And I came really close at the beginning, and I failed on the last drain. Missed it. Oh yeah, there it is. So Sid turned and threw Hogan out. Now look at that. So Hogan's grabbing him, and Flair's just hanging out there. There it is. So Ric Flair entered at number 3, and he survived over an hour to win the title. This was so good because everything that was happening was developing and extending the storylines that were already in place. And it set up new storylines between Hulk Hogan and Sid. And that's what the Royal Rumble is supposed to do. It's supposed to bring everybody together to then develop new storylines for the upcoming WrestleMania in the next year. And these days, the Royal Rumble is so predictable. They've really kind of lost the touch of what made this such a special show, and the match itself, why it was so special. There we go, we got 2 loops. Gotta get the center. Nope. So that should have given me crush. I went around that loop. I have a feeling my sensor that's underneath the ring there, it doesn't always register when I get the ball through. So I may need to adjust that next time I open it up. Come on. So I'm streaming this, of course, at the same time that I'm uploading this stream here. But it shouldn't affect it because that's downstream and this is upstream, so. I always thought they have crazy names for moves in wrestling when they're just doing simple punch type of thing. Yeah, a punch is a punch, but they've got like knife edge chops, so if you use the back of your hand and you chop across the chest, that's called a knife edge chop. Usually the chops are done flat palm, so you smack them right on the chest as hard as you can with flat palm, and it makes a nice big smack. There's a whole variety of different names for pretty common moves, but most of them are fairly common, and then if you use it as a signature or finisher move, they give it a new name. Because like Hulk Hogan's finisher is just a leg drop, but when he does it, it's an atomic leg drop. And then of course, like a power bomb, you know, Sid would do the power bomb, and that's the traditional name for, you know, their heads between the legs, and you lift them up and rotate them and slam them down on their back. Well, a lot of guys use that, so sometimes it's called a jackknife. There's the last ride the Undertaker does, which is like an elevated power bomb. But yeah, there's tons of different move names that are sometimes the exact same move. Yeah, look at Sid. Sid was amazing. He was a pretty scary guy too. Yeah, Rolling Wonder's asking how many balls are installed. So there's actually 6 balls in here. So if you actually hit the Royal Rumble mode at the end, it'll launch all 6 at the same time, which is crazy. And I've only done it a few times. I was so close earlier on the stream tonight, and I really want to do it before the stream ends. So this is the end of the show here. So once we're done with this, I'm going to turn the music back on the pinball machine, and I'll play a little bit longer and just try to get that Rumble mode. I really want to do that on stream. This is a classic promo too. I've got to listen to it.
This is the greatest moment in my life. When you walk around this world and you tell everybody you're number one, the only way you get to stay number one is to be number one. And this is the
that belt right there.
Title in the wrestling world that makes you number one. When you are the king of the WWF, you rule the world. Think about it like that.
Mr. Perfect.
Guys, woo! Woo! Let's give a big one. Woo!
Woo! Nobody celebrates like the Nature Boy Ric Flair.
Over 60 minutes, never took a back step. Look at the Hogan. Look at that ring. That's why he is world heavyweight champion. But not guys to say we told you so. But we told you so. Okay, very good. Ric Flair, you have made
I love that Mean Gene is yelling at some guy off camera to put out a cigarette. Oh, that sucked. Oh, down the outlane. Yeah, what a show. I could watch this anytime. I never get tired of it. Otanashi, how's it going? Thanks for coming in. Really glad to see you in here. We just finished watching the 1992 Royal Rumble, which was the show that this pinball machine was based on. So, I mean, I could watch this on a loop constantly and just play this game forever. It's so amazing. Great stuff. Woo! Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and turn the volume back up on the pinball machine. And then, I really want to hit the Royal Rumble mode. So just in the background here, let's see what else we can put on. And look at the artwork of that poster, man. I wish I could find an original copy of that. So cool. So let's go with WrestleMania. So this is the show that followed immediately after the Royal Rumble, so a couple months later. And all the stuff that happened at the Rumble there sets up for the main event on this show.
I got you down for the count. Don't sell for delivery. Rise to the occasion with DiGiorno. Fresh from your
It's a little sad that on the pay-per-view service, like this is like a Netflix for wrestling, that they still show commercials. But if that's what it takes to keep it only $9.99 a month, I'm okay with it. Less than $10 to get all the wrestling in the history of WWF, WCW, ECW. It's totally worth it. Alright, let's crank the music back up on the pinball machine. My volume control is kind of weird because I have this custom audio board in here to run the real music of the wrestlers, and so it's converting an analog dial into digital, and it doesn't do it very good. Alright. So it looks like we've got quite a few people watching in here too. Really appreciate it. So, of course, always appreciate the lurkers watching too. Feel free to jump into the chat if you have any questions or want to mention anything. You want to watch one now? Any good free ones? You can pretty much go onto YouTube and find stuff, but the WWE Network has, the best quality of, all the shows out here. Hoosier Dome. Look at that. I mean, that's amazing to see an audience like that. And it's going to be twice as big as that in 2 weeks in Texas at the AT&T Stadium. I can't believe it. I'm flying down there a week from, actually today, now that it's technically Thursday, so pretty much just a week from today, I'm going to be flying to Texas to be not quite ringside, but close. So I'm going to hit that get back in the ring. Whoop, stay. Whoop. Oh, that sucked. It went all the way around and down the center. Reba McEntire. Yeah, I don't know I don't know of any free source that you're going to see good quality, but you can definitely find stuff on YouTube. turn this down a little further. I'm not going to be on camera side, so I won't have any signs. Basically, the way they set up the hard cam, the ring is in the center, the entrance is to the left, and the hard cams are down here. So my seat is like right to the left of the hard cams. So there was no chance you'll see me. I was ringside at WrestleMania 30, and I think I made it on camera maybe once briefly, but I was actually stationed right behind the Steadicam operator on the floor. So every time they would come down the ramp, the guy would turn, and I was like right behind the camera the whole time. But I did make it on SmackDown about a month ago when it was in Portland, because I was ringside at the corner, and there was a couple shots when Jericho and AJ Styles were wrestling where the camera kind of crossed over.
Pandemonium in the ring.
Hey, I just heard Matty Tanks, thanks for the follow. Oh, you're hosting the stream. Thank you for the host. Really appreciate it. Anybody coming in on the... there's Angry Face 13. How's it going? Anybody coming in with the host, feel free to jump over to my chat if you want to join. Just click on the David Batman 1980 link at the top, and it'll bring you over to the chat window. I'm not intending to play for another few hours. I'm really just trying to get the Royal Rumble mode, and we'll probably be done for the night, but who knows how long that'll take.